Welcome to Rinkside Rundown, the podcast that puts you right in the heart of women's hockey. I'm your host, Chris Sinclair, and each week I'm on a mission to showcase the incredible women who are lighting up the ice across the globe. Get ready as I chat with rising stars, seasoned pros, and all the game changers making waves in the world of women's hockey that you won't find anywhere else. So, let's dive into the exciting world of women's hockey and make sure to click that subscribe button so you never miss an exciting episode. Hello and welcome back to Rinkside Rundown. I'm your host, Chris Sinclair, and today I'm absolutely thrilled and honored to be joined by the one and only Sami Jo Small, a winner of multiple international medals with Canada, an author, a keynote speaker, analyst, and well, that's just scratching the surface. Sami Jo Small, welcome to the show. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Chris. This is exciting.
Yes, absolutely. It's a thrilling moment for me. This is, as we were talking off air, being able to watch you play. You were one of those first players that I ever watched play when I started this passion for women's hockey, and now to have the opportunity to have you on the show, it's a complete honor, like I said. So I'm thrilled to get to know you.
Either that gives away my age, or I'm just very humbled that you.
Or yeah, it might give away my age as well. So don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. But I always like to start these conversations where it started for you. So when you look back, what was it about hockey that you were just like, this is what I want to do? What drew you to hockey initially?
Well, I think growing up in Winnipeg, there wasn't really that many options in terms of sports for kids to play, and it being cold so much of the year. So many kids in the neighborhood played hockey, and specifically, I had an older brother. A lot of women of my generation, that tends to be their story. And a couple factors allowed me to play, because this is a time before women's hockey was an Olympic sport or a national team sport, or really we could dream within the game. So there had to be a confluence of a lot of factors that allowed me to play. The first being I had parents that didn't grow up in the game of hockey, so they didn't really have these preconceived notions about what women could or couldn't do. I had a brother who was joining hockey, and I asked if I could play. And my parents didn't have any hesitations around that. When my parents went to sign me up at the local community center, they didn't have a ringette team at that particular community center. And my parents didn't have any connections to figure skating, which is what a lot of my peers of those ages did. And so when my dad asked if I could play, the organizer was like, I guess, I mean, sure, like thinking I wouldn't last that long, I think. But once I got out on that ice, I had played a lot of street hockey with a lot of the boys in the neighborhood for a long time, and with my brother, and just wanted to be around it. I'd watched Hockey Night in Canada. I always wanted to be the goaltender. I made my own pair of goalie pads out of my mom's corduroys. I made goalie masks. I wanted to find sort of a place within the game. And it was my brother, I think, that really allowed me to play with him and his friends. I mean, he could have been awful about it and not allowed a girl to play, but he was really my biggest staunch advocate. I think part of it was they wanted a goalie. But secondly, just he never wanted anybody to say that his little sister couldn't play. So I just think a lot of things happened that allowed me to play the game. And I honestly think that I found a lot of joy just in sport in general, in competition. So growing up in a different country or a different location, I might have been drawn to different sports. But I mean, I love the game of hockey because that's what I was really surrounded by. And when my brother decided, I also grew up in a swimming family, so we played a lot of different sports, but my brother went on to become a nationally ranked swimmer. But hockey just stuck with me, and I just saw that all the way through, even though really there was nowhere to aspire to. I dreamt of playing in the NHL like a lot of my teammates when I was little, but there wasn't sort of the long-term goals within the game. But I didn't care because I just really found the joy within the sport. And in my book, the dedication at the beginning is to my parents, and it's for encouraging play. It's not encouraging me to play. It's not encouraging playing the game of hockey. It's simply play. And that's what they just always wanted to see, was that their daughter and their son just, could find joy in finding their own passion. And for me, the passion was not necessarily hockey, but I think the passion was seeing how I could achieve and seeing the competition and how I could be a part of a team and help the team succeed. So I think from an early age, it I always say it just happened to be hockey, I guess.
So I think one of the questions that I really love to learn more about is family. And you brought it up a number of times here. And I think, when you're getting into a new sport, especially one that maybe it doesn't run in the family, it's easy. I think it goes without saying that when, in this case, hockey is a big part of your family, your dad used to play it, your mom played it, whatever it is. I think then it's kind of ingrained in you that you're going to probably be a hockey player. For you, you mentioned the impact that your brother had on you, the support that you had from your family. How do you think that support really changed your perspective on hockey? And was it something like, if you didn't have that support, do you think you'd still push yourself to be involved? I mean, we can talk about sports in general, but maybe just hockey in general, or hockey more specifically.
Great question. Because of the product of the time that I grew up, so more than 40 years ago, being almost 50 years of age, I'm 48. So it was really unacceptable for girls to play hockey. There was no girls hockey team, so it wasn't an option. Later in life, I assumed that most of my peers at school most of the girls didn't want to play hockey. I just assumed they didn't see the value, didn't see the passion that I had for the game. And I didn't realize until I was, a little bit older, probably in junior high or high school, that they weren't allowed to play. I just didn't know that there was all these obstacles and barriers. And so I think, my parents being the real heroes of the story, they're the ones at a young age that dealt with all the misogyny and all of the comments and all of the people trying to tell them that I had to quit the game. And allowing and really shielding me from a lot of that. I mean, I heard it. It wasn't like it wasn't part of my journey, but they were the ones that stoically, I think, just plowed on. And it wasn't as if they necessarily were huge advocates speaking out against it. They simply were encouraging me, I guess, within that. They always said, there was no pressure to play. There was always an out. And there were certain things that, I was cut from teams because I was a girl, and it was, said verbally to me. There was, I played baseball as well. And despite being a member of the team, couldn't play in the provincial championships. So there was definitely, as a young girl, this is before the age of 10. So there's things I definitely saw. But I say during, working now full-time as a professional speaker and speaking to corporate audiences, I'm very grateful that I had parents like that simply allowed their daughter to find joy, because that's really all we want for our youth and for our kids, is for them to find something that they like, and that they continue to encourage that. But not everybody is that fortunate to have had that in their lives. And I think even as adults, we can find those people that unconditionally believe in what we would like to achieve. And I think it's really important that we surround ourselves with those people, because I would say for the majority, that is not their story. So how do you find those people that unconditionally believe in what you're doing? And I mean, for a lot of your listeners who are hockey players, that could be a coach, that could be a teammate. But you have to find those people so that when times are tough, you have somebody to go to and you don't just feel like you're in this alone. I never felt like I was in it alone. And in fact, I had a ton of amazing teammates that if any one of the guys that I grew up playing with, and I played boys AA and AAA hockey simply because there was no other options. If any one of them had been really nasty or really brutal to me, I might have walked away. But they weren't. They treated me mostly, I would say, for the most part, like a sister within the organization, within the team. defended me against some of the other comments and some of the other players that I played against. But I think that that really was the product of community sport as well. You know, I see girls that have make this journey in boys hockey. It's very different for them because they're on different teams year to year. You're having to find, I mean, just hockey in general is so different. This really was community hockey where we knew everybody that we played with, and there was a AAA team in the area, there's a AA team, there's an A team, and you just kind of went up and down within that organization. So I always knew all of the boys that I played with. There was never any new players who came in. I mean, maybe somebody moved into the community, but they were quickly ingrained in the fact that Sami Jo's going to be in the dressing room, Sami Jo's going to be on the team. This is just a part of how we operate here. And that was, you know, I think just as fortunate for me that I encountered all of these boys who would have very much grown up in misogynistic homes, but saw me as a value within the organization. And a lot, which I'm so proud of now, is so many of those guys now coach their young daughters' teams or are involved in their daughters' hockey or in women's hockey. And that's just really special for me to see, because I think, you know, you can change one mind at a time, and that really can change the world within that family, that organization, and that community. So that was a very long-winded way of saying that I think I had a lot of factors that allowed me to fall in love with the game of hockey.
Yeah, and you've touched on a couple of things, and I think, you know, a couple of those challenges that you've had to overcome throughout your time in hockey. And I think, you know, while there has definitely been progress made, there are still a lot of challenges that unfortunately women have to deal with in terms of being able to achieve their dreams within playing the game that they love so much. I want to know, you know, for you, you know, growing up, and, you know, clearly you didn't let things get in the way. You always, you know, you found a way to persevere through those obstacles, through those challenges. What, like, how did you, or how, like, what was it within yourself? How did you find the strength to say, you know what, there's misogyny there, you know, I'm being called all these different names, you know, I'm having to overcome all these obstacles, but I don't care. I just want to play. How did you overcome those? Because I think this is still something that, again, like I said, to a lesser degree now, but still something that would be relevant for a lot of young girls playing the game of hockey right now.
Of course. And not just hockey, but women in various different
Yes,
industries,
of course.
right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know, I think part of it was my personality. You know, I don't, I tend to be, my husband says I tend to be oblivious about a lot of things. So I think that that's one thing, is that you know, I don't necessarily internalize a lot of that is going on around me. But there are certain, I mean, there's certainly times that got me down, that were really hard and really difficult. And I think it's okay for all of us to feel those moments too, to realize that the world is unjust and unfair. And that's one thing that I like to impart with my my audiences, is to realize that life is not always fair, and that while it can be perceived that way for you, the person sitting across from the table from you has gone through very different challenges, very different obstacles. So I guess having the empathy for those around you. You know, I felt like for a long time that I was representative of my gender. So I felt like I put an undue amount of pressure on myself to perform. Now that probably made me a better hockey player, to be honest. Like, I mean, I certainly went above and beyond to try to ensure that nobody ever said anything about women in hockey in general. However, you know, I think that I just recently spoke at the, it was the Women of Lumber and Forestry Association, and that particular association is very skewed towards men. So maybe 95% of the people that work in there are men. So these women that get together within that organization, within that association, it's relatively new. And they just said, you know, how powerful it is to see other people do what they do. And for the younger ones to see some of the older ones having gone through a lifetime within this association, working in that industry. And I think it was really powerful when these women who had been in there for a long time said, well, they're the lucky ones that made it through. And so I think about that in my hockey career, that I feel like the lucky one. I feel like the one that got to play, that got to reap all the rewards for all of the incredible women that came before me that weren't allowed, that, were told they couldn't, that pushed the barrier just a little bit further every time. I was at an event on the weekend in Boissevain, Manitoba. So it's down 3 hours from Winnipeg, down by the border. And I had a woman who came up to me who was waiting for me to come in. And now she was this older woman. She wanted me to show me a picture of her hockey team when she was younger. So this was late 70s, and that she was so proud to show me a picture that she played and that she was on this hockey team. And on the hockey team was the mother of Jessica Campbell, who is the coach for the Seattle Kraken. And I just thought about how powerful that was, that this woman, first of all, she was so proud and so excited, and she got to play. But that Jessica's mom also played. Where is that story? Where is that story that she has, been able to learn the game of hockey from both her parents? That isn't said enough. The Hughes family that learned their hockey from their mom, from Ellen Hughes, who played on the women's national team for Team USA. I mean, those are the women that we owe a debt of gratitude to, because they're the ones really that have changed all of the perceptions for all of us. And so, sometimes I'm a little bit quick to remember and to throw back to history, to, try to encourage people to remember where we all came from. But I don't want those women to go unremembered. I guess I want to remember them, and the ones that we don't know the names, like this lady Carol that I met in Boissevain, who, as a woman in the 70s, was still driving across town to be able to play hockey, and what it took for her and her teammates to be able to play that great game. So, I think that history we all owe it to the incredible women that came before us, and the shoulders, we stand on the shoulders of giants who have done an incredible service to all of us to be able to play. So I feel fortunate that in the end, I'm the one that reaped the rewards. I'm the one that got to go to the first Olympic Games, that got to be the product of all of these women working so hard so that I could find the joy in the game.
So this brings up a great question, because I think at this point, when you going along those lines, so you're when you were thinking back on your career, you wouldn't be where you are without those greats before you who persevered against all obstacles. But you're also someone that people will look to when it comes to, hey, she persevered and she was able to achieve greatness. What does it mean to you? Obviously it's great to recognize, and I think you're so right. It's so important to recognize the foundations that were built, these incredible women who worked their tails off to get to where they were, to define the game as a woman. And then every time that happens, the more it happens, the easier it becomes for everyone down the line. There's still obviously a ton of work to go and do, but knowing that they did all that work, you're a part of that as well. And what does it mean to you as you think about that and think about your role within how women's hockey is defined? And I think both on and off the ice. I don't think it's not just about what happens on the ice. It's also about the communities that are built, the enthusiasm that's built. You're a part of that as well. What does that mean to you when you reflect and you think about the impact that you continue to have in women's hockey, obviously now in a bit of a different role that we'll get to in a moment, but as a hockey player, what does it mean to you to kind of reflect and think about that and the impact you've had?
That's very kind. I mean, nice. That's very nice. Thank you. I think about all of the amazing journeys that so many of us got to take together. So, in our playing careers, going into small towns and making sure that we went out to the local schools and into the community centers and encourage people to come out to our games. That really started to change the momentum. And thinking back to so many of the journeys that I got to take with such incredible people and some of my best friends now, that was so I have enormous gratitude for all of that. And I think, I hope that what we built together, whether it was the CWHL, whether it was the PHF and the Toronto Six, I hope that that is remembered in a way that is positive. I think that often in today's landscape, history is written, well, landscape in general in life, history is written by the victors. And so I hope that history is written in a way that can show the positives and show the incredible journeys that we got to take and the incredible people that toiled away really in obscurity for so long. And, there's still a lot of sadness that comes with all of that as well, because it's not there anymore and we loved it. And so it's hard when things are taken away from you in that way. It's hard to see it in the positive. But the more, the further I get removed from those situations, those teams, I think I do remember the positive. I remember all the, the incredible days and how much I loved going to work. This last iteration working with the Toronto Six was my most favorite because I think I learned so much as an administrator and as a leader within an organization. But it was because it was so different than anything I had ever been in that we had men and women in an ownership group that were of color. So Bernice Carnegie, Ted Nolan, Angela James, Bryant McBride. I mean, these people who helped me to lead in a very different way than I would have ever led. As a white woman in the game, I've had a lot of privileges. And so seeing and having my whole world opened up in that way was, I feel so thankful that I got to work alongside those people every single day and to learn from them and learn about their stories and their journeys and be able to uplift others. I think that has really, I've tried to take their legacy, take their impact in my life, to realize that, it's not about me, that it's about changing the landscape of hockey. It's about changing the culture of hockey and ensuring that when we do have a voice, that we allow the voices that are often not heard to be heard. And I think that's not always easy to do. It's really easy to take the microphone, to take the limelight, but it's not easy to uplift others and to look back and to, lend a hand to pull everybody forward. And, I think it's hard when you get left behind. It's hard to see the game in a way that you always did and to look at it and smile the way that you did, but realizing that you had an impact, that you had an impact on others. And that organization, the 25 people that worked with me, let alone the other 25 players, we're still always in touch. And I think, I look back at it and smile, and I'm starting to, the pain is starting to subside, and you start to move on, and you're just, pushing forward with their legacies and encouraging them. I actually just got together with the Toronto Furies coaches last week, and Courtney Kessel was our head coach. And so, trying to plan a game around going down to Boston to encourage her, to watch her and FaceTiming with her and hearing all of her her news and the latest. And it was just, really special. And to see where these people have moved on to, and knowing that I was a small part in their journey and their career, that's what I now try to live the legacy, I guess, that we have created, is to not stand up on a soapbox and preach about what should be or what could be or how things should change or complain about things, but rather to simply uplift others into positions where they can make an impact and they can make a difference, and to showcase the really great things that are happening so that everybody can see the whole landscape and not just have one narrow vision.
And I think you brought up a really, really great point there. And I think one of the things that we often, and I mean, just in life in general, let's be honest, but I think especially in sports, it's always forward thinking, right? It's
Mhm.
always, okay, what's next? How do we, how do we overcome this obstacle, or how do we recognize this success? How do we build on this? All those sorts of things. But I think it's equally as important to reflect, to look back. You wouldn't be where you are because of X, Y, and Z. When you when you think back to when you reflect, what are some of the defining moments for yourself in your career? What are some of the biggest moments for you? What were some of the lasting memories that you have, as we kind of wrap up your career, your hockey, on ice, and even in the front, in the front office with, the Toronto Six, and with the CWHL as well. What are some of the biggest and fondest memories that you have, especially as you see now? And we'll get more specific with the PWHL in just a moment, but especially now that you see where the PWHL is and where it's planning on going.
Well, I think my fondest careers of playing were the mundane, walking through airports together, or being on a long bus trip together, or being in a dressing room together. And that doesn't change. To be honest, I play on 4 women's rec teams now, and I still really love it. I play out for the most part, but none of that changes. I think simply going to the rink brings me so much joy still, and I don't see it as my career being done. It just is different. It's every year that I continue to play the game has had I've been surrounded by different people and got to know so many different incredible people through the game. So um, we have a rec game that happens once a week that is a lot of former CWHL players that are around my age that come and play, and it's just shinny, but it is so amazing because you get to now be a part of those women's lives, their kids' lives, see what they, have accomplished since then. And we also just become kids again when we're in the dressing room. I mean, it is simple. You kind of shut out the rest of your world. And for that hour, like anybody that gets to play rec hockey, for that hour, there's nothing else. You're just focused solely on that puck and on your team. And that's what I love about sport, is that it can give you almost instant friends that for 1 hour you get to just be transported into this other world and forget about everything else. So I think that's what I remember from my playing career. From my administrative career, starting the CWHL was such an incredible experience, because we were, for the most part, most of us that were involved, like right out of college. And similar to the players within the PWHL, it was such a business learning curve for us, and trying to, I say it was like a mini MBA as we tried to figure out and navigate the path. I think we made a lot of mistakes that, looking back on it, I wish we had involved the previous ownership, the previous leagues. But you get these blinders on that you think that what direction you need to take and how to get there. And there were some amazing things that happened within the CWHL very quickly, and similar to the PWHL is it happens all so quickly, and you're just trying to do the best you can in that situation. And we were fortunate. I mean, I feel like so lucky that I got to do all of that before really social media exploded. So we didn't necessarily have the scrutiny that the today's era has, and that's very, very different. So, yeah, it was, trial by fire. I mean, there's so many great business people from the downtown business core that helped us through a lot of that and held our hands as we learned everything from sponsorship to taxation to registering to, everything that goes on within a business, to how do you book the bus to get to Montreal, like everything that we had to figure out. But when I look back, like, we didn't have to figure it all out. There had been things there before us. And simply because the owners took a step away from the table, it didn't mean that those weren't still people and humans. So we could have used a lot more of what had existed before us. However, we plowed ahead, and you make do with what you can. And so that was really, I think, for my business career, that was such a perfect timing, I guess. As terrible as it was that the previous NWHL folded, for me in my business career, I happened to be a full-time hockey player. So I wasn't, I had time. I was simply training, but I had this engineering degree from Stanford that I felt like I could, that I liked to learn. I wanted to know more about the different aspects of business. And so in terms of my business career, it certainly helped. But it was one of the setbacks, I think, within women's hockey, that you take a couple steps backwards to be able to move the needle a little bit more forward. And I think at each iteration, that's kind of what happens. You take a couple steps backwards to move it a little bit forward. But, as women's hockey continues to grow, I'm hopeful that those couple steps backwards every time don't need to happen, that we can continue to learn from history and learn from those that have gone before us, so that knowledge is shared and that it isn't thought that it has to be rewritten in a certain way. You can always pivot, you can add on to what has been created, which is amazing. But I don't think there's any reason why there needs to be any outsiders within the game. I think that, it's my hope that within hockey that it is more inclusive, that more people feel like they can get involved, and it doesn't just continue to be a very white dominated sport, and that we can encourage, it's not an easy task to do, but watching the Breaking Down Barriers, that program that Soraya Tinker is doing on TSN right now, it's just so amazing to see what she's doing in the game. And realizing that there's people doing this work, that we just have to give them more praise and uplift them more, and really push them to the forefront, because they're the ones that are going to have the real impact on the game and make it go in a direction that everybody feels valued and everybody feels welcome.
And we will be right back. This episode is sponsored by sports nutritionist Melissa Buffunos of MB Performance Nutrition. As a former competitive hockey player turned nutritionist, Melissa's mission is to help the next generation of hockey players optimize their diets and health so they can perform their best both on and off the ice. Ready to dominate on the ice? Melissa's new course, The Hockey Nutrition Blueprint, is available now. If you're serious about learning how nutrition can impact performance and building actionable nutrition strategies based on your unique needs as an elite hockey player, learn more and sign up at melissabuffunos.com/course. That's melissabuffunos.com/course, and make sure to use code Rinkside to save $50 off the regular price. Thank you to Melissa Buffunos for sponsoring this episode.
And now back to the show.
When we think about, the PWHL, especially, obviously that's the main league right now. This is a league that isn't afraid to take a swing. And I think, to your point, having those creative individuals involved as well, who are also equally unafraid to, hey, let's try this. Works? Great. Jailbreak rule. That's a perfect example, right? Let's try it, see how it goes. Everyone loved it. Wouldn't happen truthfully in any other league, right? Like, they're willing to be a little bit progressive when it comes to, let's try these crazy things. Like, let's see what will happen to improve the game. And I think having that foundation, especially in the inaugural season, now heading into the second season, I think bodes well. And again, like you said, having really great people like Tinker involved, like, these great people will absolutely help to define what women's hockey looks like, 5, 10, 20 years down the road. And I think that's why we're seeing such an enthusiastic response to the PWHL. It's like when you have the right people in place, you have that enthusiasm, fans just gravitate towards that, right? And it's just innate. They just want to be a part of it. And like you said, being inclusive, right? PWHL games. I've said this 1,000 times. I'll say it 1,000 more times. PWHL games, the most incredible sporting experience I have ever had. And I've been to NHL games, MLB games, basketball games, all these different sports. And a big part of that is the inclusion, the inclusivity in the stands, right? You can be sitting next to an opposing fan, but it doesn't feel like you're sitting next to an opposing fan, right? And I think that's what will help drive this forward. And when we, segue into some of the additional things you've done in your career, moving forward through your own career, one of those things is you're an author. When you look back during that process of writing your book, did you ever in your life think that you would be a published author? Like, was that a goal of yours? And what was that process like for you? And what's it been like to be able to share your story?
For sure. So I love what you said about the PWHL. You're so right. But I do think there is some areas, there still is no trans inclusion policy. So, I mean, I'm throwing that out there that needs to be out there.
I agree.
And when you think about one of my, you asked me about what are some of my moments that I remember. Playing alongside Jessica Platt was, a huge honor for me, and getting to know Harrison Brown. There needs to be some changes within the game there that just make it so that everybody feels welcome, right? And you're right that there are a huge amount of people that feel very welcome that when they walk into a rink, but there still are a lot that don't. So there's I just want to put that out there.
Yeah, good. Glad you called that out.
Yeah.
Absolutely agree.
So being an author, let's turn the page, for lack of a better phrase. It wasn't anything that I necessarily set out to do, but when I played, I journaled a lot. So that was part of my process. That was part of dissecting every game. And so I had a lot of information about the games, about the training. We used to have to do logbooks every single day about our training, and the good and the bad, and your feeling and your emotions and all of that kind of stuff. So I had a ton of information. I think when my career came to a close with the national team in 2008, it was almost a cathartic way to get my feelings down on paper, and to ensure that the stories of perhaps some of the forgotten were remembered, because it's, I run a ton of hockey schools, and I'm on the ice a lot with a lot of various different young girls. And yes, they knew the name Cassie Campbell, and yes, they knew Haley Wickenheiser, but that was kind of it, and that they knew our team. We were successful. That team had won 4 straight gold medals at the Olympic Games, but they didn't really know the people. And so as much as it is my story, I mean, I didn't want to tell other people's stories without, I want them to be able to have a handle on their own stories. I still want the names to be remembered in history. And so I just wanted to get it down from my perspective. I mean, we're a team of 20 women, which essentially is probably about a team of 30 that, fluctuated in and out of the organization. And it often, for those of us that, were on the cusp a lot of the times, the feelings were very different than if you were the one scoring the big goal or playing on the power play. So the stories that I tried to tell, I think, were ones that I think every player within the game goes through. So, maybe being in a role that you don't want to be in, how do you navigate that? How do you still find value and contribute to your team in those situations? But also the stories of feeling like there was cuts looming over your head at all times, that there was all this pressure on us to play, and that often the coaches pit us against each other, and that it wasn't always hunky-dory. It wasn't just always the love of your teammate. It was the exhaustion and the feeling like you just can't possibly go on, and why are you doing this, and questioning a lot of those things. So I wanted to get that all on paper as well, and to ultimately pay service. I felt like I was a little bit of a caretaker of that history because it just really hadn't been written, and so I wanted to ensure that that was remembered in a way that, obviously it's from my perspective, and I remember things in a very different way than everybody else would. And I write that right in the book. But telling stories without judgment is what I tried to do. I didn't want to say, this is what I went through. This is, this was a tough game, and you should do X, Y, and Z to ensure that you too can have perseverance and overcome and achieve. I didn't want to impart that on anybody else. I just wanted them to feel as if they were going through the journey with me and think about how they might have reacted in those situations, or what they might have done differently even than I did. So I hope that it is a interesting read, and that they get a lot of history, but that it also is about the stories and about the people. And it wasn't certainly easy for me to write. It was, I would say, more cathartic than anything. And that, but there would be nights where I'd go to bed and my husband would be like, why are you so mad, or why so sad? And, feeling like you had just lost that game all over again, or you had just been told you weren't playing again. Or some nights I'd be like so excited at dinner, and, we had just won a world championship, but it was like 10 years ago, but I was just writing about it that day. So I certainly went through the gamut of emotions all over again, but it was a fun process to do, and something that I'm so glad that I was able to do and get down on paper. It was unfortunate that my publishing date was during the pandemic, simply because I wanted to be able to be out and see people. But now, 10,000 books later, I get so many people that come up to me that, have read it, that they're got it for their kids, or, they were women's hockey fans or whatever. My most special one was at the World Championships. I had never met Debbie, who is the super fan for the Toronto team that everybody sees in social media with all the different outfits. And that she had read my book, she had bought my book, and she was just so taken aback by a lot of the stories, and so thankful that that part of history was remembered. So that was really special. Like, whenever I hear those moments from people that they've read it, and that they appreciate the storytelling, it means a lot to me.
Yeah, and I think that's so important. We've talked a lot about, how those voices sometimes are lost, right? Those stories are sometimes lost, right? We're always thinking forward, this league folded, this league didn't work, okay, this one's going to be successful, all these different things, but we're not always telling or talking about those stories. And those stories, like, that's what this is about, and that's what people gravitate towards. And that's the one of the, I think, wins and losses, on the ice, that's definitely a big part of sports. But I think what really draws people in, what really makes people love and fall in love with the sport, are the stories. Mm-hmm. Like, the stories really matter. And you've provided a great example, right? Like those memories, or those moments where you've written a book, you're like, I hope people like it. And then people come up to you and like, this meant something seriously important to me. And I've given it to my daughter. I've given it to, my grandchildren, whatever it may be. It just must feel so, surreal would be one word, but also so meaningful to you to be able to make sure that even if you may feel like you're only playing a small part in this, you're also helping to tell those stories.
For sure. And hopefully evoking some change within their life too, whether it means that they have more empathy for the people around them, or whether they just have a better understanding of, the game that they're walking into. All of those things. I hope that it serves each person in what they need at that time in their life. But yeah, what's strange about it is that I wrote a lot about my life, right? So it's a lot. There's stories from high school. There's stories of my friends. There's stories of my first boyfriends before I met my husband. And so then to meet somebody and they know all of that about your life is really, it's really intriguing, it's definitely, it is a power dynamic that the other person now has full control of, the way the conversation can
It's
go.
like they've read your diary almost. It's kind of like it's
Exactly.
a bit of a
Yeah.
surreal experience in that
I
moment.
mean, I guess it's no different than today's era where a lot of these young players live on social media, right? And we know so much about them and they don't know anything about us. So when you get into a conversation with them, it definitely is one-sided. But that's kind of how I guess it feels like for the book. Because I've told a lot of things in there that, yeah, it was, a lot of them are from journal entries and from parts of my life that, and that's why I didn't want to tell anybody else's story, because, I wanted to ensure that there was some care taken to ensure that there wasn't anything out there that nobody else wanted, out there. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think, as we continue looking through your career, I think one of the things that's really incredible is to see your success both as an analyst. Even most recently, people would have been able to see you at the Women's World Championships, which was fantastic. Keynote speaker, like you're really making an impact. You're really making sure that you continue to connect with the community. You continue to provide your incredible insights on the game, which is always amazing to see. Did you ever see, thinking back to that transition from, okay, I'm playing the game, to now I'm not playing the game, to now I'm in the media, who were, let's be honest, when you were playing, certainly the media coverage wasn't what it is now, but still, you're making that transition now to the other side. What did it feel like for you to make that transition? And maybe could you share some advice for especially specifically young women who are maybe looking at that as a potential career, whether they play the sport or not, but that they may want to make that career, that a career rather?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. My mom told me the other day that when I was a young girl, I used to say that I always wanted to be a broadcaster. And so that was a dream of mine when I was a young girl. I wanted to be a news broadcaster. That was, I can remember watching CBC News on TV and, feeling like I wanted to enter into that space. And it wasn't just like suddenly there's a click and I changed and wanted to be a broadcaster. But I would say early on in my career, so while I still played in the 2000s, there was way more games of ours on TV that were covered. And so they were always looking for women within the game to lend a voice. And so depending on what team you played on, if your team didn't maybe make it to nationals that year, or maybe didn't make it to a certain championship, you had the opportunity to, get into the media side of things. So I did color commentating and various different roles within the game while I was still playing. So that was sort of part of, I guess, my journey into entering in to become a professional speaker. I didn't know that being a speaker could be a full-time job, to be honest. I had no idea. I entered into university in pre-med and I found engineering, and I loved engineering. And, in my mind, I was going to become an engineer for the rest of my life. And so it really wasn't until, I guess, during my career with the national team, we did play in a lot of small communities, and we did a ton of events. And most of my teammates hated speaking. Like, they hated getting up in front of a crowd and sharing the information about our team and all that kind of stuff. So I liked it. And I liked being in front of the crowd. I liked sharing a message. I liked being able to change their minds about us and our team. And so when people started to ask me to do that and they paid me to do that, I thought, wow, this is pretty amazing. And so then when it was, entering into the, I guess, the twilight of my national team career, I was, thinking about how I was, because that was essentially where most of my money was coming from, was being a carded athlete at the time. And so thinking about what sort of the next steps are, but I still wanted to play professional hockey. And that was 2008. And I was able to play professional hockey till the age of 42. So for a long time after that, but it was really thanks to entering into the speaking world. So I read a book by Tim Ferriss called The 4-Hour Workweek. And in it, I mean, there's a ton of just great nuggets, but in it, he writes, whatever you want to do in life, join that association. And so I just kind of did a Google search of what is a professional speaker? Like, how can I do more of these gigs where people pay me to do them? And joined the Canadian Association of Professional Speakers and really made it my business. And in my mind, I thought, I can do this for 4 more years until the next crop of Olympians comes out. So once the next Olympics happens and there's new celebrities that are going to take our spots, then I'll move into the engineering world. But the beauty of being a speaker is the flexibility that it allowed me to continue on with my hockey career. And not very many women continued after the national team. I think most of us get cut and it leaves you a kind of sour taste in your mouth, and you don't necessarily want to go back to the game. But the joy had not gone for me, I think, because I didn't grow up. I didn't play NCAA hockey. I didn't, there was never, it wasn't really till the age of in my 20s when I joined the national team that it started to be really serious. And so I hadn't really gone through any burnout. I mean, I felt like I could still play and still contribute. So becoming a speaker and learning from other speakers that are quote unquote non-celebrity speakers really changed my perspective and made me realize that if I could create a business around this corporate speaking, that this could be something that could be lucrative for the rest of my career. So that's really what I did. And 25 years later, that is my job. So, while I dabble in a lot of other things, and I'm very fortunate that I get to do the World Championships, the U18s, rivalry, things with Hockey Canada. But this has really been the backbone of our existence as a family. My husband, who is a 6-time Paralympic athlete in the sport of sledge hockey, he is, I've been able to have this job to support the family while he pursues his dreams. And I'm so grateful for that, because the world of professional speaking means that every week I'm in front of a different audience and getting to learn a little bit about that industry. And there's no test. I simply get to tell stories about my hockey career and impart some knowledge, some questions, some information to these people in an entertaining way, and share with them why I think our team was so successful for so many years, and hopefully allow them as a company, as an association, to become better teammates, to build a better team. But it's been something that's been absolutely rewarding for me. Getting back into being a broadcaster with TSN has been amazing. Now getting to work alongside Megan Bozak, who is one of my dear friends, I think has really just added to the broadcast too. I mean, that's just really fun for me to get to work with her. Her husband actually lived with my husband and I for a while in our basement. So we have a different relationship, and I feel like that just makes it super comfortable. And then, Tessa Bonham and Laura Dyken, both of them are just incredible women that we, look for guidance for. So to me, that I still feel like I'm new. I still feel like I'm learning so much. One of my dear friends, Jennifer Bottrell, obviously does this as a full-time job, and I see how hard she works and what she does on a daily basis. And it's just, it's absolutely incredible. Cheryl Pounder, like, they're just so busy doing this within the game. And it's women like that I don't know even whether I aspire to be them, because they work so hard at this game. And it's not an easy life what they live, but they make it look so easy, and they're just so smart and so intelligent on TV. And so I try to learn every day from watching them on TV. Kenzie Lalonde. I mean, there's so many amazing, Chris Simpson, amazing women within the game that you can learn so much. So I still feel like a little bit of a newbie, even though I've been involved for a while, but I don't get to do it that often. I just get to do the big tournaments, I guess. So they there's months between them where I'm just kind of sitting watching others trying to learn.
Yeah, and I don't want to dismiss how easy you also make it look. I know you say you're still learning. but I do want to say you do make it look really easy. And I think this is a perfect segue into this next question that I have, which is, the before I want to say especially watching the World Championships, there was such chemistry on that panel. Like it just like it was a piece of the event that fans were absolutely looking forward to. The analysis,
really nice.
again, like I said, the dynamic, the chemistry was spot on. It's exactly what we would want. And I wanted to know, as someone who's been involved in women's hockey for as long as you've been involved, now that we have the PWHL, how do you think those events, like especially being able to experience those events on the scale that they are, how do you think it's evolved since the introduction of the PWHL, where we finally have like fans of women's hockey can literally just open up YouTube and watch it? Like it's not, you have to find some sketchy link somewhere to try to hopefully be able to watch at least part of a game, or you're just looking, you end up just with highlights. Now you can watch a full game with great analysis throughout. Now that the women's game is at the level that it's at, how do you think that's impacted these world championships, these U18s, all these different things, and with fans being so passionate about the sport?
Yeah, I mean, I guess this year we'll really be able to tell. I think that the U18s that I did last Christmas, the PWHL had just started, and then even the World Championship, it was just kind of midway through. So I think there certainly is an impact, and there's a huge impact, but I think we're going to live it more now. Well, it'll be interesting to see the rivalry series coming up here in just a couple weeks to see what the fandom is like, and if that translates to the national teams, which I'm super hopeful. Anytime there's buzz around women's hockey, I think it only helps to serve the other parts of hockey. I know you do some work with Etobicoke Juniors, and seeing what is not now the PWHL, under 22 Elite, is that what it's called?
Yeah, OWHL. Yeah.
I still think of it as the PWHL.
Yeah.
So seeing the impact that it has on that level, and then those players, and then on the younger players as well as you go down, and I still do a lot of coaching within the community. I think that this is a whole generation that will just understand that there is something at the end, and there always has been something. And that's the thing that I don't want history to be rewritten to say that wasn't there, because it always has been there. I think the difference is the amount of money within the marketing. So the fact that the PWHL can produce and pay for each broadcast and get it on TV is amazing. I mean, that's what we always dreamt about, and that's what we always wanted to have, and now it's here. So the fact that you can see that people have teams they cheer for, that they know the players, that they know the individuals. Like, we always had that in the game, but it was in such a small segment, and it tended to be around the cities where the teams were, and it didn't really go beyond that. So the fact that now I can be in Boissevain, Manitoba, and get asked about it is really special. So I think, as what's the saying, is that a rising tide lifts all boats. I think that is huge. I think a lot of it is also, on the coattails of what the WNBA is doing, and what women's tennis has already done, and the LPGA. And I mean, so much in women's sport is changing. The landscape is really evolving, and I think women's hockey is just at the perfect point to be able to capitalize on all of that. And so I think we're going to see the rewards here trickle down, but I think the real rewards will be 10, 15 years from now, to see the men and women that enter into those roles and those positions and just elevate it to even the next level. And the dream within the game, not just of being a player on the national team, but maybe they want to run a sponsorship division, or maybe they're looking to get into media and be an analyst, or maybe they want to be a referee, and they can see all of that on TV now, and they can dream and aspire within the game and not just as a player. So I think that's really special to see. The World Championships this year are not in North America, so I'm really curious what it'll be like there in the Czech Republic, what the impact will be like there in terms of viewership and getting people out to the games and just the buzz around the game as well. So the impact that it's had already in Europe is, I think, both tumultuous and exciting. It's definitely changed the landscape of their leagues as well. And what does that mean for those ownership groups and putting money into the game over there? And there's still so much to navigate within our game, and all really good, positive questions that have been asked for a long time, but now there is money to find the solutions. So I think that's what's really exciting about it.
Yeah, it's crazy to see how many leagues, the success, the enthusiasm between, and like you said, across women's sports. It is absolutely amazing to see, and it's only just beginning, right? And it's just to see the reception already at the level that it's at. Like you said, 10 to 15 years from now, oh boy, you better be you ready to hold on, because this is going to be an amazing, amazing journey. I want to know, I have one last question for you before I get into the fun game section of the show.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So get ready for that. That's for sure.
Okay. Buckle up.
Yeah, buckle up. I want to know, I found this quote from you, and it really resonated with me, and I want to hear your thoughts about it. So you said, we don't always get to choose the role we play, but we get to choose how we play it. And I think there's so much to talk about here, but I'd love to hear why that was something that was important to you.
Yeah, I mean, that really is the real crux of my presentation, of my story, of my speech. So that is, I think it's evolved into that quote, but it has to do with life in general, right? We're put into roles, whether it's motherhood, whether it is in a classroom, whether it is in a friend group, whether it's in a recreation, or whether it's at work. We're put into roles sometimes that we don't want to be in. We're sometimes elevated into leadership roles that are exciting and are amazing, that we really want to be in. But with each role comes a new set of responsibilities, and trying to navigate how can I contribute? And I think that that's one of the biggest things with that particular quote is it really has to do with, finding your own value and realizing that it isn't about the reward. It's not about the medal at the end. It's not about the pat on the shoulder to know that you did a good job, or, the acknowledgement. It is about being proud of what you do each and every day. And sometimes we get lost in that because, some days are hard and some days are more difficult, and we feel like nobody understands what we're going through. But ultimately, just knowing that you did what you could that day and being okay with it, and realizing that, sometimes things are going to be challenging. Sometimes things are going to be tough. And, I feel like elite athletes will get up on a soapbox and tell you, yeah, you just have to work hard and you can achieve it and you can achieve your dreams. Well, that's not the reality for most people. I mean, only less than 1% of the people will be able to go to an Olympic Games or win a Nobel Prize or get to the end of whatever it is that their ultimate dream or ultimate goal is. But it's about the journey. It's about the journey to get there and what you learn along the way. And, I often have to go back to that particular quote to remind myself, because, I'm reading a book right now that I think it's called Think Different. And it's about being okay with being wrong, and to search out moments where you are wrong, because it means that you're trying to learn and you're trying to enlighten yourself. And that, we have to remember that that's okay too. There's going to be days where you're not right and where it doesn't work out the way you want it to. But what can you do the next day? And I had a dear friend of mine who, had a mantra that he used to always say, today you just have to be a little bit better than you were yesterday. And that, I think that's all we can ask of ourselves. We're going to have dips. We're going to have days that you just don't feel as good as you did the day before. But that, it's always about the next moment. It's always about, how could I have done that better? And let's see what I can do to be better next time. And I think that if we try to have that openness in our learning process, to know that there is no end, it is simply a journey, and it's a journey that we all take together, that the relationships are really ultimately what are the most important, and that if you can uplift others and build those bonds between other people, that you're going to find just as much success in seeing other people succeed than if it was you that was up there in the limelight. So I think that that's one of the things I try to live my life by, that how can I help others? How can I help them achieve? So that, sometimes when things are not going my way, I can look to them and think, how proud I am of their success. I think of people that you've had on your podcast already. Somebody like Mari Peterson, who works at my hockey school, just an amazing human, and, isn't getting the playing time right now at BU, but was on the U18 team and won a gold medal. She wasn't expected to be in the final game, and there she was, despite all odds, winning it for Canada and having those big moments and, wanting to recreate that. But that ultimately she has learned that, how do you find your role? How do you find your value? And to just be an exceptional teammate. And she's just an amazing human and an amazing person. Carly Jackson, another one that's been on this podcast, a friend of the podcast, as a third string goalie for the Toronto team. She was a third string goalie with my Toronto 6 team. I got to know her really well, and just an incredible person that understands that the relationships with others is really what matters the most. And it's not to say that she's not driven and she doesn't work so hard to want to be the number one goalie. You want to feel like you deserve to be that number one goalie, and on the ice pushes herself every single day to be the best. But by doing that, pushes others to be better and pushes others to be the best as well, and isn't afraid to lend encouraging words to her teammates around her. So, I think I'm inspired by those kind of people every single day. And Carly is somebody that I look to. They're such an incredible role model for what hockey, and I'm not sure if I said the word they prior, but I will reiterate that it should be they. I think that that's what we need to in hockey to aspire to create role models and mentors like Carly, because I think that that's what the PWHL can create, and to make sure that we elevate those voices as well, and make sure that all of those stories are told. And whether Carly gets to play in big games in the PWHL or not, the fact that their journey has got them to where they are right now is absolutely incredible. And I'm just so incredibly proud to know them. And when Carly won the Isabel Cup, Angela James and I went out to Nova Scotia to celebrate with her community or with their community, and to just see how much they are embraced by the community. It was just so special having their number raised up to the rafters. I mean, that's something that I will never forget, to have been a part of that journey. So I know there's so many players that I've been just a small part of their journey, and it's realizing that, whether the role is big or whether the role is small, that it doesn't really matter. If you can try to play those roles with positivity, uplifting the people around you, I think that you'll just start to find success and seeing other people succeed as well.
And that's exactly what I love, is that answer had nothing really to do with hockey. That answer had everything to do with, that's life advice. And I think that's one of the reasons why when I read that quote, it drew me, I was drawn to that quote, because I think it goes far beyond, yes, of course, as an athlete, there's going to be some conversation around the sport and all those things, but that's just be a good person, that's really what it comes down to. And I love that advice. And I think that it's a perfect spot for us to move now on to the game, because I think like that puts like a good bow on an incredible conversation. And now we're going to move into the game. So what this is this is
Okay.
this is a scientifically proven game to really, not that we don't now already know a lot about Sami Jo Small, but this is really going to get us to like the core of Sami Jo Small. This is a scientifically proven test. I put it together. Crack team here at Rinkside Rundown. So we're just going to go rapid fire. I'm going to try not to ask too many follow-up questions because I'm known to do that. But I want to start. So these
I'm
are
not good at rapid fire answers. It might be
That's-
20 minutes. I'm going to answer this one. But go on.
That's okay. That's okay. You and I both. There are going to be some profound questions and some just like super fun, super silly questions. Are you ready to take the test?
I'm ready. Yes.
All right, let's go. Let's go. Okay. So, what was the most surprising part of your journey from player to now as a keynote speaker, as a member of the media?
Wow. Well, I don't think my career's done.
No, of course not. No.
Watch out. I'm a honey badger. And
Yeah.
now this is my rec hockey team. I play with these women that are 50 and 60 years old. One of the teams I play on was started by Carrie McLean, who's Ron's wife. And she, I think, started it when she started playing at the age of like 40, 45. So, so surprising, I think, is that there's a whole world after professional hockey. That's surprising.
Okay, good. Oh, nice. Okay. Thought there was going to be
women's
more.
Women's rec hockey is like growing in leaps and bounds. I had no idea.
Nice. Okay. Thinking back to your hockey career, I always love asking this question. I ask it of everyone who's on the show, and I want to ask you as well. What was your go-to pregame meal?
I didn't really have one. I felt like I always had an iron stomach, so I could eat whatever was offered that day. I was never one that couldn't eat right before I played too. So there wasn't too much of a routine in terms of what I ate, I would say.
Okay, interesting. I was expecting pasta.
I did live with Jennifer Bottrell a lot of the times, and I do have to throw her under the bus because she always cut her grapes in half, and it made the grapes taste even better. So I'm going to throw that out there. Grapes taste better cut in half.
All right. Well, so, you heard it here first, folks. That's great. That's great. I didn't know that. I will try that later. So I also want to know, what does, for you personally, what does success look like in this next chapter of your life?
Well, having a young family, I think seeing our daughter grow up, encouraging my husband as he transitions from hockey to the next stage in his life as he figures out after 6 Paralympic Games what he wants to do. And, ensuring that I continue to find joy each and every day and to continue to have balance in my life. I think that's one of the things I'm most grateful for. What has happened in women's hockey is it's given me back time that I wouldn't have had. I think as an administrator, you get so involved in everything. So doing the best with the time I have to spend it with people that I love, that I, want to share time with, and now being able to go for walks with friends and doing things like that, remembering that all of that is just as important as the push and the drive and the perseverance. Because, I tend to be the A-type personality that has lists, that wants to get through all those lists, but really taking time to breathe and do things simply because you have time and you can.
Yeah, and I think that kind of ties in really well with also reflecting, right? Like when you reflect, when you slow down, I think that's when you learn the most, right? So 2 last ones for you. What was I'm going to say best piece of advice, but maybe one of the best pieces of advice you've received as you've made this transition from player to now, as a keynote speaker and as in the media?
Well, I think I mentioned it at during the rundown was, whatever you want to do in life, join that association. So I joined right away CAPS, the Canadian Association of Professional Speakers, to learn from other speakers how to run the business. And I just recently joined the STAA, which is a sportscasters association of the United States, and highly recommend it. It has a lot of information and resources for broadcasters that want to get into, whether it's as an analyst, play-by-play, color, rinkside reporter. There's various different sports that are represented, and there's just a great question and answer forum that has served me really well. But for those looking for jobs too, there's a great job posting that happens basically on a weekly basis. You could be in front of the game if you want to, be working the Wichita minor league baseball team. You want to be working with them or whatever. Yeah, I think whatever you want to do, join the association. I think that's so key, because then you're going to elevate your business and your game so much quicker than if you're trying to do it on your own.
All right, I love that. And lastly, let's end with a fun one. What is something that people may not know about the one and only Sami Jo Small?
I love to puzzle. Although I'm kind of a dorky math nerd, so I also love Excel spreadsheets, and I love all of that. What's some other things that people might not know?
So I have some spreadsheets that I would love for you to organize from. So yeah.
I did race walking at the Canada Games. Okay. There's a little fun fact. All these years later, I still have a net set up in my garage where I can shoot pucks. Still love it.
How often do you get out there?
Every day when waiting for my daughter to get off the bus. That's what I do, is I shoot pucks in our driveway. So
I love it.
As a 50-year-old woman, I'm still shooting pucks. I find so much solace just in, I guess, being able to fire pucks.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely. And Sami Jo, I just want to say once again, thank you so much as we wrap up today. I have so many more questions for you, but I can't appreciate your time enough. I thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to make time for me, to make time for this show. It's been a complete honor for me. I can't tell you enough how much of an honor this is to be able to have had this time to chat with you. This has been incredibly insightful, and I can't wait to share it with everyone. But thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thank you for all that you've done for the game too, and continue to do at the junior level with the Etobicoke. I know that you have some incredible, exciting roles coming up with them as well. And obviously, being an Ottawa fan, I can tell right away. But just being able to elevate the game, that's something that for those of us that have been in the game for so long, it's so exciting to see so many amazing people that really just want to make a difference and just want to do that. So I see that in all of the different areas that you're involved in. So thank you for pushing our game to the next level, and for doing it in such a positive way, which is refreshing and amazing to see. So thank you for all you do.
Oh, that's incredibly, I'm incredibly thankful to hear you say that. So thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. So we'll wrap up today, and folks, for Sami Jo Small, I'm Chris Sinclair, and this has been Rinkside Rundown. Cheers.